All right. Rob, if you'll get us started off with that third step prayer, I'd really appreciate it.
I would love to. Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to those in the UK. Third step prayer, which is on page 63 of your big book. God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, have victory over them, may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. May I do thy will always.
Okay. Well, we are starting a new chapter today, and that is chapter 7, Working with Others, which is a entire chapter dedicated to step 12, and for good reason. The idea behind step 12 is that this service to others does really two things. Primary thing that it does is it keeps the individual working with the other person sober. So when things aren't going necessarily the way you might think that they should go, you're still staying sober because you're reaching out and helping other people. The beauty of step 12 is that when it does work, what a great thing that is. And two people now are getting sober, or more, depending on the number of people that you might be working with and having some success with and everything. So it's a good chapter. I do want to say that as we go along here, a lot of this has to do with a positive attitude. So try and look at it from the standpoint of working with others is always best served with a very positive attitude. The other thing I think I'll bring up at this point is that I think there's you is used 13 times on this first page. So let's see if you can pick them all out as we go along. Rob?
Yeah.
Which page? Sorry.
Page 89, everybody.
Yep. Sorry about that. Yep. Page 89.
Working with others. One of the most important paragraphs we're going to read.
Yep.
Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other activities fail. This is our 12th suggestion. Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill.
No, we all are very ill at times, and I think that you recover from that. And when you start working with other people, you kind of get the idea that all of a sudden things don't hurt as much. Colors are brighter, you're more upbeat, attitudes are better, and that strength and confidence that you gain by doing so in your own sobriety is amazing. And so I think that it's worth noting that first sentence once again is practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. As we go through this is a great script for how to work with another person. So those that are sitting on the fence and they're kind of not quite sure how to jump in or when to jump in and that type of thing, we're covering the why right now, but the how and the when is what we really do focus on through the rest of this. And I would just encourage you to find that inner strength, rely on your higher power, and really jump in with both feet. Rob?
Yeah, I'm going to read something that I've got written at the top of this chapter. If we are not helping others, we are not doing this program. What can I do for others? Once we have done this process, we carry it to others. This book is specific to alcohol. Helping others is our primary purpose. Affirming the 12 steps by taking someone else through it. Now, it says here, nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It doesn't say working with other people, it says working with other alcoholics. Why other alcoholics? Because it reinforces in us what we need to do in order to stay sober. Remember when Bill went to see Dr. Bob for the first time, he told Dr. Bob, the man right behind me, right here, that I didn't come to keep you sober. I came to keep myself sober. Okay, by carrying this message, it reinforces what we need to do, and we can never forget that. Now, the other thing I want you to note is we are now included in this book. Before it was we, which was the first 100. Now they're talking directly to you. Okay, because notice all the yous. You is used 12 times in this one page. So I just like everybody to remember that. Life will take on new meaning. To watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss. We know you will not want to miss it. Frequent contact with newcomers and with each other is the bright spots of our life.
Yep. I can't say much more to this on this particular paragraph. The meaning is, or the thing is that life will take on a new meaning. Working with others is going to watch loneliness vanish, the fellowship grow up about you, and a whole host of friends. I mean, look at each other, left, right, and up and down. We all consider each other, a friend. And we got there because of alcoholism, and we got there because people were working with others, and people came together because of that work, brought us together, and now we've got a community. So I think this is just one more. This is another reason why we do this, because of the things that we're describing in these paragraphs. Rod?
Yeah. The thing is, when we're in the last days of, or the last years, a lot of times we isolated. I know I did. I spent a lot of time by myself. Now we're getting out into society again, and we're out with other people. And now we're starting to enjoy life again because we're sober. We're going to have a host of new friends, sober friends. All these people in these squares who I know so well, but I've never met. Well, Lijan I have met, so thanks for that. But everybody else I've never met in person. But I consider you all friends, and that I know a little bit about you. Maybe not your whole life story, but I do know a little bit about each and every one that's in these squares. And it's a bright spot of my day when I get together and see all you people, and I get to say hello. Before the meeting, after the meeting, we make new friends, and newcomers come into our lives who we can, share this program with. It's a beautiful existence. I, I take a look at the smiles on our faces, and what's a better way to spend a Saturday? Pete cooking in the kitchen. You know, Marcia's usually in the kitchen, but she's driving today, so you know it's great. And I look at Winnie and see the smile on her face. Life is so good. Perhaps you are not acquainted with any drinkers who want to recover. You can easily find some by asking a few doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. They will be only too glad to assist you. Don't start out as an evangelist or reformer. Unfortunately, a lot of prejudice exists. You will be handicapped if you arouse it. Ministers and doctors are competent, and you can learn much from them if you wish. But it happens that because of your own drinking experience, you can be uniquely useful to other alcoholics. So cooperate, never criticize. To be helpful is our only aim.
Okay, and to being helpful, we're still talking about the why here in this first page. Really covered it well. It's a little bit different times here. HIPAA laws and rules, confidentiality. It's probably a little bit more difficult to find out from a doctor or a hospital if there are alcoholics, but certainly one of the things you can do is to find an AA meeting. And that is a fairly easy thing to do. You can do it online via books, calling folks, reaching out to others and find out what those AA meetings are, and then just kind of watch out for the newcomers. And some of them that don't even have to be newcomers. Maybe they're just, between sponsors or something like that, and they've got a problem that they'd like for you to work on and work with them and that type of thing. And those are certainly good too. I think some of the best work is between two matured or tenured recovered alcoholics kind of working together, because now you can compare notes as to what worked, what didn't work, and that type of thing, as opposed to just testing the waters constantly with different things that you're trying with a particular individual to connect with them. Not talking so much about the program because it's scripted and very specific as to how it works, but just reaching somebody and kind of gaining their trust and their faith is you have to maneuver that a little bit. But certainly, I would say that there's just different ways of finding people that you should reach out and work with. So the other thing is that they talk about, don't start out as an evangelist or a reformer. Anything that is worth doing is worth taking the time to do it right. So doesn't mean you have to be perfect. That's not my point. The point being is don't jump in to the point of just throwing everything at somebody. I think we call it kind of the fire hose effect. I think that you kind of want to grab the person's hand, walk with them a couple of steps, and then start to introduce things as you go along. And part of that is to, tell your experience, strength, and hope, and how you got to where you are. Have them, kind of start to buy in on that, and there you go. So kind of getting into the how, and I really don't want to get ahead of myself here, but the why is still being covered here. To be helpful is our only aim, and it is just to be helpful. Now we're going to talk a little bit about when, and I'm going to kind of introduce that. A lot of people think that they have to be completely through the entire program before they reach out to other people to help, and the fact is you don't. I've heard time and time again where people are just not sure, they don't want to because they're not as smart on things as or educated. But somebody that's got 2 weeks of sobriety can help somebody that's got 2 days of sobriety, and so don't forget that there's resources. The book itself, working with others, is a great way to kind of get that information that you're looking for, as well as other places in the book prior to that. In addition to that, there's other people out there. If you have a sponsor, you run up against a speed bump or something, there's no reason why you can't reach out to talk to them. So my point is this, is that you can help somebody. Once you're in the program, once you started it, you can help somebody that's just a little bit behind you, and or by the time you get through all the first 11 steps and you're working on these, kind of working this, you get to the 12th and somebody hasn't come into your life just yet. Boy, howdy, it's really good. That's really a good time to do it, because then you get to reinforce everything that you've learned up until that point. So we'll cover that in more detail as we go along. I'm just trying to get the essence here, because I know, even from myself, and this is me speaking, is that there was a lot of trepidation when I was new and early into my recovery as to whether or not I had what it took to actually talk to, work with, help another person. And it turns out that even in very early sobriety, and Rob can attest to this, we started this class, or we picked it up, actually. I don't want to say started, but we picked it up and we made it our own. And I was I think I'm about a year or more behind you, Rob, as far as recovery is concerned. Maybe a couple of, actually, no, I'm more than that. Never mind. I'm more than a few years behind you. Nonetheless, we made it work. And we made it work because we were fearless, courageous, and we jumped in with both feet. And we made some mistakes kind of going along, but there was a lot of patience in there with a lot of people, and it worked out really well. But here we are today. All right, Rob?
Yeah, a couple of things that I just want to, part of this here is outdated. If you go to your doctor, you go to your minister or the hospitals and ask for, can I have a list of drunks that I can work with? They're not going to give them to you. Confidentiality, etc. We have the rooms in the fellowship of AA that we can find new people. Because let's be honest, if there's no newcomers, this program just dies. We rely on newcomers coming in. Okay, so that's where we find them. We put our names in the chats in Zoom and say, I'm willing to sponsor. And if somebody new puts their name in there, we, you know, message them in the chat, you know, and say, hey, you know what? Here's my number, give me a call. Or you take their number and you give them a call, you text, whatever. That's how we get people nowadays. If you go to the fellowship, you find new people there, and that's how you get your new sponsees. Okay. The other thing is that you know, it says here, don't start out as an evangelist or reformer. Remember Bill, when he first started out, was hammering people with the white light experience that he had, and he wasn't getting anywhere with people. People couldn't understand it. Dr. Silkworth, Bill, okay, hit them with the medical, hit them with the fact that, you know, they are screwed, that they, you know, there's no way they can beat this thing. Bring them that way. So Bill, okay, got together with Dr. Bob, talked about the drinking, what they experienced together. Okay, he didn't hit him with the white light experience. It took Bill time. He had to learn what to do. You know, Leo was saying, talking about tenured people. I call them long timers, people that have been in the program for a long time. You know, they talk about what works and what doesn't work, you know, and that's what they did. You know, this program, you know, when this book was written, Bill had been sober for 4 years. 4 years with this knowledge that he put together. To me, it's incredible. I want to bring up something from the third step prayer, which is on page 63. Do thy will, take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of thy power, thy love, and thy way of life. You know what? People see what has been given me. So we're going on to page 90, everybody, right at the top of the page. When you discover a prospect for Alcoholics Anonymous, find out all you can about him. If he does not want to stop drinking, don't waste time trying to persuade him. You may spoil a later opportunity. This advice is given for his family also. They should be patient, realizing they're dealing with a sick person.
Yeah, we'll be real quick on this. This is going to be a theme that we want to repeat a couple of times throughout here, and that is, you know, there are plenty of alcoholics out there. There are plenty of alcoholics that want and need help, that will readily accept that help. There are other alcoholics out there that are just not there. They may never be. They may be working on it, but not quite ready, you know, that type of thing. You want to find out that information right up front, because it's kind of like I say in sales. Is the situation real? Is this person really an alcoholic? Is it winnable? Can you get to this person and make, you know, a connection with them? And is it worth it? So is it real? Is it winnable? And is it worth it? And that means the worth it part of it is when you decide whether or not this person is ready to go and wants to make a very earnest effort in order to try to do the thing or do the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. If they're not, and if you answer no to any one of those three questions, whether it's real, winnable, or worth it, you have to either you should just step away. But there's kind of in an advanced mode, you might be able to work your way into a yes. But the fact is that you don't want to be what we talk about, that just being helpful. You don't want to be an evangelist or a reformer. You don't want to come on too strong. You don't want to pressure them too much, because the opportunity could actually be eliminated because they get turned off by you. So just think about it that in those terms. Is it real? Are they really alcoholics? This is that information gathering. Is it winnable? Meaning, is there a connection being made? And is it worth it? And that being the amount of effort it's going to take for you to get them to get into the program and actually do the work. You just want to make sure that it's not going to be a Herculean effort and then find out that it wasn't worth it after all, because they just were too difficult to work with, etc. So that's kind of my approach to it when I start talking with a newcomer. I'm not asking those specific questions, but I'm asking myself those questions and trying to define and decide whether or not somebody's really worth working with. Rob?
Yeah, you know, the thing is that a lot of times we want it more than they want it. And, you know, it's great to, we care. We know how much our life has changed, and changed so much for the better, that we want it for everybody else. But it, as they say in the book, and when we get to page 96, it'll say, search out another alcoholic. There's thousands of them, millions that are falling through the cracks. Just keep looking around until you find somebody that really wants it and that it will actually do the work. Because there is some work. I don't think there's a lot of work, but there is some work. So if there is any indication that he wants to stop, have a good talk with the person most interested in him, usually his wife. Get an idea of his behavior, his problem, his background, the seriousness of his condition, and his religious leanings. You need this information to put yourself in his place, to see how you would like to approach to see how you would like him to approach you if the tables were turned.
Yeah, I'm going to go on a limb here and say this is a little bit outdated. If you have the opportunity to talk to a family member or a close friend, not just their wife or spouse or significant other, it's a bonus. I believe it's not necessary. I think that that you can find out if you are using this book and how it works to kind of work with the other person. I think you can find out the information you need from the individual. And if you do find out from somebody else, it's just a bonus there. So, Rob?
Yeah, remember on page 77, it said, our real purpose is to fit ourselves to be of maximum service to God and the people around us. That's why we try to find out all the information we can. But as Leo said, it is outdated because when you go into the fellowship, very rarely do you meet the partner of the other person. Rare. It does happen every once in a while. I know I used to bring my wives. Sorry. Sorry, that was plural, and I only have one wife. I used to bring my sometimes funny things do happen. I used to bring my wife to a meeting. She used to come on Friday nights, so she got to meet the people I was hanging out with, and it was fantastic because she got to see why I was smiling when I came home, because of the fun we had in the meetings. And these people are crazy that we hang around with. They are absolutely crazy. But you know what? They're a fun crazy, and they're my tribe, as they say. So, don't hesitate for open meetings to bring your spouse or your significant others, because they can see what's going on in the meetings and find out the people that you're hanging around with. It puts them at ease too, because let's be honest, a lot of times they had no idea where we were or what we're doing or what we're getting up to. They deserve that. Sometimes it is wise to wait till he goes on a binge. The family may object to this, but unless he is in a dangerous physical condition, it is better to risk it. Don't deal with him when he is very drunk, unless he is ugly and the family needs your help. Wait for the end of the spree, or at least for a lucid interval. Then let his family or a friend ask him if he wants to quit for good, and if he would go to any extreme to do so. If he says yes, then his attention should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. You should be described to him as one of a fellowship who, as part of their own recovery, try to help others, and who will be glad to talk to him if he cares to see you.
Yeah, so I think the important thing here is to catch the person at the right time in their attempts to be or want to be recovered. At the end of a spree, when they're feeling a lot of regret, some remorse, there is a good time because they are actually wanting to make good on the things that they've done. They've probably stepped in it more than a little bit, and they're ready to kind of come to terms with what they're doing. During, I got to say that right, but during a drunken spree is just impossible. They're probably unapproachable. They are probably obstinate, and there's a lot of objectionable behaviors going on, and they're liable to say or do something that's not quite acceptable and or desirable, and you're just going to find yourself beating your head against a wall. So big message here: don't work with them while they're drunk. wait until they're not drunk, perhaps right after they've recovered from a drunken spree and are just feeling that remorse and regret, is an excellent time to make a connection with somebody that's hopefully ready to recover from alcoholism. Rob?
Yeah, wait for the end of the spree, or at least for a lucid interval. Remember at page XXVI, it said a man's brain's cleared. And, you have to wait for that. And also, you should be drawn to you as a person who has recovered. We are now introducing ourselves as someone who has recovered. Okay, I know there's an awful lot of, are we in recovery, or are we recovered? This book says we have recovered. Okay, if he does not want to see you, never force yourself upon him. Neither should the family hysterically plead with him to do anything, nor should they tell him much about you. They should wait for the end of his next drinking bout. You might place his book where he can see it in the interval. Here, no specific rule can be given. The family must decide these things, but urge them not to be over anxious, for that might spoil matters.
Yeah, so there's a balancing act that's going on here with regard to introducing yourself, introducing the program, and introducing the book. The idea here is all you're trying to do is just make them aware that there is a way to recover, and you have been through it. You would like to work with him or her, and here is something you might want to peruse, skim, look at, read, etc. It's the book, the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and sure, if you have a connection with the family, maybe you're a friend, maybe you're a family member yourself, just let them know that there's patience is a virtue, and to not get over anxious or over expecting of progress at this point in time, but nonetheless, a couple of subtle things, and that's really probably the best word for this, is the subtlety of the approach at this point in time in approaching someone. Rob?
Yeah, and right now I'm just going to go back to page XXIX in the doctor's opinion. After they have succumbed to the desire gain, and so many do, and the phenomenon of craving develop, they pass through the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. At that point, they're looking for help. That's where we can come in and help them, because they're at their bottom right now and they want help. Page 91, everybody at the top. And usually the family should not try to tell your story. When possible, avoid meeting a man through his family. Approach through a doctor or an institution is a better bet. If your man needs hospitalization, he should have it, but not forcibly, unless he is violent. Let the doctor, if he will, tell him he has something in the way of a solution.
Absolutely. So the point I'm getting at, or want to get at here, is you own and know your story better than others. So the idea here is to have them leave your story alone. Don't tell your story. Don't and avoid meeting a man through his family. It's uncomfortable. It's awkward. Really, the one-on-one kind of with the confidentiality, the private kind of nature of that is the way you want to go. If there's hospitalization needed, which we now call rehabilitation centers and that type of thing, assist with that if you can, if they will accept that assistance, or present that to the family so that the family can kind of make the arrangements and that type of thing. But if this person needs help getting to a rehab center and it's not too far away, it's not too much out of too much time out of your day, offer to take them and help them get there in a respectful manner. I do say not forcibly. The idea here is and I know for me, if a person's going to be violent, it's really probably not a good idea for me to get involved. I think it's that's that's a what am I trying to say here? That's a level that I'm not prepared to interact with, and that's on a personal level. You may be different, but if a person's going to be violent, I'm assuming that they're probably not ready to recover, and it's probably not worth my time to try to do anything, because the damage that could occur, I think, is could be far-reaching, and I think it's important for you to make that assessment of your own. But um, uh, just remind them that they have a solution, and that you'd be happy to work with them at a time when things aren't quite as volatile. Rob?
Yeah, remember 1939 when this book came out? Bill would take people into his home to detox them. Bill also let people stay in his home for long periods of time. One gentleman committed suicide in his house with the gas. Bill Cousins. His brother lived not far from where I live. I went looking for the house, but the house is no longer there. But one gentleman chased Lois around the kitchen with a knife. Okay, we don't do these things nowadays. Thank God. Okay. Lois said she used to come home and she wouldn't know who would be there or how many people. But Bill brought these people home thinking he was doing the best thing for them. We have detoxes now. It's hard to get into the ones in Toronto, but we have detoxes where people can get medically looked after. Because let's be honest, detoxing from alcohol is one of the worst things that anybody can do. It is dangerous. People can die from it, go into convulsions, DTs, etc. They need to be monitored. We can't do that. We're not doctors. We are just, we run the asylum. We're part of the asylum. So remember, we have these places that we can go nowadays where in Bill's day, they didn't. When your man is better, the doctor might suggest a visit from you. Though you have talked with the family, leave them out of the first discussion. Under these conditions, your prospect will see he is under no pressure. He will feel he can deal with you without being nagged by his family. Call on him while he is still jittery. He may be more receptive when depressed.
Yeah, so let's assume that you've got somebody that did go into a detox and then ultimately into a rehab center, and they have family and friends day every so often, whether that's every couple of weeks or so. If you're close by and this is somebody that you've helped get to this point, by all means jump into this, because right now they are at they're receptive, they're captive, obviously, and they would appreciate a familiar face, I'm sure, coming in and just and meeting with them, checking on their their well-being and how they're doing and that type of thing. And maybe at that point they want to start talking a little bit about their experience at this point, and maybe they want to hear a little bit more about your experience, strength, and hope. But that I would just say that, man, what a great opportunity if you are invited, and or if you feel like that you've made a good enough connection that on a family and friends day kind of deal, that you can come in and actually spend a little bit of one-on-one time with them, if they are in a rehab situation. If they're not in a rehab situation, I still think that the underlying message here is to do a one-on-one and not with the family. Again, we're trying to avoid that pressure, that awkwardness, that embarrassment, that type of thing. The last thing you want is for the person to feel so bad about themselves that they focus on that and not on the actual effort that's being made towards their recovery. Rob?
Okay, page 91, everybody. See your man alone if possible. At first, engage in general conversation. After a while, turn the talk to some phase of drinking. Tell him enough about your drinking habits, symptoms, and experiences to encourage him to speak of himself. If he wishes to talk, let him do so. You will thus get a better idea of how you ought to proceed. If he is not communicative, give him a sketch of your drinking career up to that time you quit, but say nothing for the moment of how that was accomplished. If he is in a serious mood, dwell on the troubles liquor has caused you. Being careful not to moralize or lecture. If his mood is light, tell him humorous stories of your escapade. Get him to tell some of his.
Yeah, this is really just building that rapport between two people. And we're encouraging you to talk at this point a little bit about your past. What they say the escapades. I think that's a great word that you can put on a lighter plane, and just really spend some time talking about yourself. If that person wants to say, "Oh yeah, I remember a time," or "That sounds very familiar. I actually did something similar to that, and it was X, Y, or Z." Just quiet, be quiet. Let them start to talk and start to gain that information and that knowledge that you're seeking overall to try to see how you should proceed. It's just kind of a simple, give and take at this point. If they're not wanting to talk very much, then it's an open invitation for you to share your story. And I promise you, I don't think I've ever worked around another alcoholic, whether I was working with them or they were working with me or we were just being friends, that we didn't have the "Oh yeah, that happened to me too," or "Oh, I had something similar," or "Wait a minute, I forgot about that. You're right. That was alcohol." I mean, it's a lot of fun. I think overall it ends up being a lot of fun. But just be ready to do that. Have your war story ready, I guess is a good way to put it. Rob?
When he sees you know all about the drinking game, commence to describe yourself as an alcoholic. Tell him how baffled you were, how you finally learned that you were sick. Give him an account of the struggles you made to stop. Show him the mental twist which leads to the first drink of a spree. We suggest you do this as we have done it in the chapter on alcoholism. If he is an alcoholic, he will understand you at once. He will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own.
Yep, and that's just a continuation of what we were talking about. Tell him specifically how you were baffled, how baffled you were. Okay, this is a great opportunity to do so, and how you finally learned that you were sick. Bring up the big book. I cannot begin to tell you how many times I would go to a meeting and I'd ask, "How do you know you're an alcoholic?" And not once in the first few meetings, the first few groups, the first fellowships that I was a part of, not once did somebody open up a big book and say, "Leo, this is more about alcoholism. Perhaps that will help answer your question." They would just say things like, "Well, do you drink alone? Do you drink more than, 1 or 2 drinks? Do you drink and drive?" Do you, different kind of qualifiers, if you will, with regard to that. And none of it was anything other than this person's opinion and somewhat anecdotal. I would just say that, bring up the big book at that point. So how you finally learn that you were sick, I'm not saying that you put the big book in front of them and say, "Read this." I'm just saying that you can at that point say, "I learned that I was an alcoholic because I read this chapter, I read this excerpt, I read this section of the book," and have them tabbed. If you look at Rob's book, he's got tabs everywhere. And I'm sure that if I was to ask Rob, "How do you know you're an alcoholic?" he could probably give me 3 strong references, including more about alcoholism, out of his book, and say, "Read these 3 different things, and then let's talk about whether or not you're alcoholic or not." That type of thing. And that's all we're trying to say is just use the tool to your advantage, and use the tool to this person's advantage. Be specific about it. Talk about the things that we're talking about at this point. We're doing a crawl, walk, run kind of approach to things. So right now we're kind of in the crawl and walk phase, if you will, when you have got somebody that's interested. And right now we're still talking about the experience. We're talking about the struggles. We're talking about the escapades, the sprees, the debacles. We're just trying to make those connections, because here's another sales technique. You're widening the gap at this point. You're at point A, you want to get to point B, but in this phase, what you're doing is trying to make A and B as far apart as you possibly can, because ultimately, using this book in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, you're going to bridge that gap, which is going to essentially bring it back together And then that is in and of itself is a great sales technique to work with somebody. It's not manipulating. I'm telling you right now, a lot of people go, well, that's just manipulation. Point being is we're human, and we react to things that we go, I want to be at B and it's way out there. It seems like it's going to be far away. And then when you help bridge that gap, they're like, oh my gosh, Leo, you have helped me with the answer. One, you strengthen the connection and the relationship that you have with the individual. And two, by giving them the solution, you bridge that gap and they feel like they really accomplished something, because at first they thought it was far out. And when they got it, they're like, well, that wasn't so hard. I can do things that look challenging. So you're really trying to get them to have more confidence and more, courageousness in order to be fearless and go after things that they think are insurmountable. So it's a widening of the gap, bridging that gap and bringing it together. So right now we're in the process of kind of widening the gap. Rob?
Yeah. Tell him how baffled you were. Well, I didn't want to drink, but I kept drinking and I couldn't understand why. Well, this is what this person's going through. So I go to page 24. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. The tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected. Here we go. The squiggly writing, they paid extra for this, so we have to really pay attention. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, have lost the power of choice in drink. Our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with a sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We were without defense against that first drink. I didn't want to drink. I'm baffled. In all my other activities, my self-will, my self-knowledge keeps me out of situations that, is good for me. But when it comes to that first drink, I take that drink and I don't know why. For reasons yet obscure, he will match your mental inconsistencies with some of his own. Page 92, everybody. If you are satisfied that he is a real alcoholic, begin to dwell on the hopeless feature of the malady. Shown from your own experience how the queer mental condition surrounding that first drink prevents normal functioning of the willpower. Don't, at this stage, refer to this book unless he has seen it and wishes to discuss it. And be careful not to brand him as an alcoholic. Let him draw his own conclusion. If he sticks to the idea that he can still control his drinking, tell him that possibly he can, if he is not too alcoholic, but insist that if he is severely afflicted, there may be little chance that he can recover by himself.
So the idea here is there's a couple of points. If you are satisfied that he is a real alcoholic, now you are making a mental assessment of your own based on his story back to you, based on the experiences he's had that he has shared with you, and you can kind of connect the dots. Be careful though. Do not call him an alcoholic at this point. It's up to him to kind of, or her to say whether or not they are in fact alcoholic. They're not, I think that at this point in time, if you're sitting down with somebody, you're listening to their story, they're listening to your story, they understand that you are a recovered alcoholic and everything, they're probably going to connect the dots on their own. I'm fairly confident that that's going to happen. And without you even trying, which you really just let them kind of get to that place on their own, they will come up and say, I guess I am really alcoholic. I really am an alcoholic, or didn't realize that this drinking that I'm doing is really a cause for alcoholism. And oh my gosh, I can't believe that I've done the things that alcoholics have done. And it really looks like I'm an alcoholic. Let him draw his own conclusion. Let him draw his own conclusion. Now, if they still think that they can control their drinking, again, this is that point in time where you kind of go, okay, they're not ready. You can just make yourself available. Let them know that you've got a program if they so choose to kind of go down that path. that you feel like that is going to be that can be very successful for them, and then just let them go at that point. Again, we don't want to push. We don't want it, as Rob said, we kind of want it more than they do. You want to kind of be equal. If not, you want to be half a step behind them. You want them to really want it in order to make it work from that standpoint. And but just remind them, hey, if you are really this severely afflicted, these things are truly happening to you, there may be little chance of recovery by himself, meaning under his own power and his self-will. So, Rob?
Yeah, now I'm going to take it to page 30. The idea that somehow, someday, he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people, or presently maybe, has to be smashed. The big lie that any period of sobriety we're able to drink, that we were making too much of a simple thing, and that we're not really alcoholic. You know, if we have the idea that one day we'll be able to control and enjoy our drinking, we're in trouble. Okay? As they always say in the Keystone Group, we have to smash the idea that we can ever safely take a drink. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness, a fatal malady. Talk about the conditions of body and mind which accompany it. Keep his attention focused mainly on your personal experience. Explain that many are doomed who never realize their predicament. Doctors are rightly loath to tell an alcoholic patient the whole story unless it will serve some good purpose. But you may talk to him about the hopelessness of alcoholism because you offer a solution. You will soon have your friend admitting he has many, if not all, of the traits of the alcoholic. If his own doctor is willing to tell him that he is an alcoholic, so much the better. Even though your protege may not have entirely admitted his condition, he has become very curious to know how you got well. Let him ask you that question if he will. Tell him exactly what happened to you. Address the spiritual feature freely. If the man be agnostic or atheist, make it emphatic that he does not have to agree with your conception of God. He can choose any conception he likes, provided it makes sense to him. The main thing is that he be willing to believe in a power greater than himself and that he live by spiritual principles.
There's a couple of points in here. Continue to speak of alcoholism as an illness and don't hesitate to talk about it as a fatal malady. People die every day from alcoholism. Those are unfortunate losses, and it's a tragedy. But just make sure that you do in fact kind of weave into your discussion the seriousness of alcoholism, the fact that it could not only be deadly, it can hurt and harm other people. It can be deadly to them as well for obvious reasons. And talk to him about the hopelessness of alcoholism, that constant circle that you can never get out. It's like a wheel for a mouse or a hamster that just keeps going and going and going. You never get to where you want to get to because it's just one big loop there. And hopefully they start to admit to you that they have their own problems, their own issues and their challenges and stuff. And if that's all right, then talk about that as much as you can. If she has gotten curious, tell him exactly what happened to you. Now we've been talking about this already, so hopefully at this point you've already talked a lot about yourself and the troubles that you've had, relating it to at this point we're talking about the fatal malady. Obviously it's a malady, we're kind of touching on and referring to the malady of the mind, and there's no reason why you can't define that for them as well, and so that they understand what we mean by malady of the mind. But stress at this point, now you can start talking about the spiritual feature whether you call it God or your higher power. I'm one that actually refers to it as my higher power, and I have found that higher power. I have tapped into that inner strength. I have made a strong relationship with it, and I really draw upon it when things get really rough, and I celebrate it when things are going really well. But I still stay in touch with it. So whether they are religious or not, atheist or agnostic, we take everyone. And the idea here is that you don't have to believe in the same higher power or God that the definition of is not my own. And remember, it has to make sense. And not only just it has to make sense to this person, but it has to make sense in the overall picture of recovery. Okay, we've talked about the doorknob. I think you've heard either Bill S. or Rob talk about the doorknob or whatever. But the doorknob is not going to help you through a challenging situation. So it needs to be something that makes sense. Rob?
Yeah, let's bring Bill into it now, Leo.
Yep, sounds like a winner.
Yeah, hi, this is Bill, alcoholic from New Jersey.
Hey,
Thanks a
Bill.
lot, guys. Good job today. This here chapter 7, this is the meat and potatoes of this whole program. This is where we're trying to get to. This is what is going to keep us sober. This is actually the whole culmination of this whole thing. And notice the title of the chapter. It says working with others. It doesn't say working on others or working for others. We're supposed to work with others. In other words, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder. That's what we're supposed to do. And the first sentence in this paragraph, this is one of my favorite sentences in this book. Practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. Practical experience, that's the experience of the first 100 of the people that came up with this process and put this book together. Their experience is that nothing, and nothing means nothing, nothing will ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. Not picking up the coffee cups, not doubling up on your meetings, not calling your sponsor. Nothing's going to keep you sober more than working with another alcoholic and trying to help that alcoholic stay sober. And then right after that, it says, it works when other activities fail. That means when everything else doesn't work, calling your sponsor, doubling up on your meetings, calling 3 or 4 alcoholics a day, picking up the coffee cups, mopping the floor. That's all real good stuff to do. That makes you part of this whole process and everything. But when all of that stuff doesn't work, what this book says is you go work with another alcoholic and you won't relapse. If you don't want to relapse, take another alcoholic through this process, and that will keep you sober. Whether it keeps the other alcoholic sober or not, that's not what you're trying to do. You're trying to stay sober. And if the other alcoholic gets sober, that's a bonus. Just like Rob pointed out, when Bill went to see Dr. Bob, and Dr. Bob asked him, why are you here? Why did you come here to keep me sober? Bill said, I didn't come here to keep you sober. I came here to keep me sober. That's what this is about. By trying to carry the message to someone else, it keeps you sober. It reinforces your program. It makes your program work better for you. When you try to explain something to somebody, it makes you understand it better. That's why we do this. And like was pointed out, you is used 13 times on this first page. Bill's not, in the beginning of this book, they were using words like we or us or that kind of stuff. They were talking about the first 100. Now this book is specifically talking to you. Bill is talking to the reader specifically here. He's telling you what to do. He's telling you that you can help someone else. Once you've got this process, once you're sober, you can help someone else stay sober. And like Leo pointed out, even if you haven't been through all of the steps, if you're just new, if you've got 3 days or whatever, you can help somebody with 2 days. Even if you haven't been through the steps yet, you can stick out your hand. You can welcome them. You can show them where the coffee is or the donuts or the cake or whatever. Show them where the literature table is. Help them get phone numbers. Introduce them to the other people in the meetings. You're still helping somebody. And that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to try to help one another. Why? Because that helps us. We don't help other alcoholics because they're alcoholics. We help other alcoholics because we're alcoholics. And this program, the 12-step, mandates us to help other alcoholics. It says, try to carry this message to other alcoholics. It doesn't say, do it if you got nothing else to do. It says that's what we're supposed to try to do. We're supposed to try to carry this message to others. And it says try because if they don't get it, that doesn't mean you failed. You still did your part in carrying the message, and that will help you stay sober. You'll get the spiritual benefit out of the step. And what Bill does when he's going through this here chapter, he's giving us suggestions or instructions on how to work with somebody new. And like was pointed out, some of this stuff is a little bit outdated. Like it says, you could ask doctors, ministers, priests, or hospitals. Today, they're not going to tell you anything. Back when this book was written, Bill and the other people that were in New York, they used to go back to the town's hospital and ask Dr. Silkworth to point out somebody that wanted to get sober so they would know who to work with. Today, if you went to a hospital and asked who in this hospital wants to get sober, they'll call security and have you removed. They're not allowed to do that kind of stuff. They can't give out information on patients today. They have confidentiality laws about that stuff. I think they call them HIPAA laws, whatever they are. They're not allowed to divulge information on their patients. Back when this book was written, it was a different world, and they could do things different. You know, doctors, ministers, priests, and hospitals, those are places where drunks usually wound up at. They would wind up seeing a doctor or going to a minister or a priest for some kind of guidance or wind up in a hospital. So that's where they went looking for these people. Today we have meetings all over the place. I know a lot of them are shut down because of the pandemic, but that's your best place to find somebody who needs help. Go to a meeting and look for somebody, or just go to a meeting and hang out there and wait for somebody to come in, however you want to do it. Back in the beginning, they didn't have meetings all over the place. So they had to go to these different places and look for them. And today, if you try to do that, like was pointed out, the laws are against that. They won't let you do it. So again, what Bill is doing here with this chapter, he's trying to give us suggestions or instructions on how to deal with somebody brand new, what you're supposed to do. And as we go through this chapter, he's going to keep telling us over and over and over again what we're supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it and how we should deal with somebody that's new. And well, we're up at the top of the hour, so that's all I got. Thanks a lot for letting me share.
Thanks so much, Bill.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Rob. And
Serenity prayer.
yes, sir.
God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks, Bill, for all the help. I really appreciate it.